The dairy industry is a creepy bestiality cult. Here's one more reason why. Not only do dairy farmers wank off bulls and feast cows for profit, not only do they indoctrinate their kids into doing the same thing, there is also this.
Have you ever gone to a state fair or livestock show and wondered why people show dairy cows? Have you been curious to learn how the judges place those cows the way he or she does? What do judges look for in these animals? Why did the herdsmen walk these animals slowly around in a circle like that? Well, today we're going to learn all about dairy judging to answer all of those questions. But before we learn the tips and tricks of dairy judging, let's learn about why we judge dairy cattle in the first place and why farmers work so hard to prep their animals for huge week-long shows like these.
These are dairy judging contests. Dairy judging is basically a skill farmers develop so that they can select and breed the cows who will give them the best yield for the least investment for the longest time, and I'll elaborate on that later. This brochure from the Holstein Foundation, one branch of many of this creepy bestiality cult, describes dairy judging as such. Dairy judging is an activity that allows you to have fun while building dairy knowledge and developing other important skills such as public speaking, critical thinking, decision-making, and self-confidence. This is what dairy cows are judged on in these competitions. 40% of the score is given to the udder, which to me is already creepy and bestiality adjacent, and we haven't even started yet. Here are some of the ways dairy judges are describing udders. More bloom to the udder, more veining of the udder, more udder texture, exhibits more bloom and capacity of the udder, more balance and symmetry to the udder, less quartering when viewed from the side, more youthful udder held tighter to the body wall, carries udder higher above the hocks, udder shows more balance from front to rear, udder carried higher off the ground, more distance between the hock and the udder floor, large, more capacious udder. And after this they go through every part of a cow, comparing to what a winning cow should look like. The judges compare the cow to the perfect dairy cow standard. Most of the criteria are based on whether or not the cow will better survive the abuse of being constantly impregnated and milked without becoming a downer early on. For instance, the udder height is valued for the fact that the teats are not touching the ground, reducing infections. But some of the criteria are just straight up beauty standards. Chad DeCow, a dairy researcher, claims that farmers choose tall, thin cows based on the judging, but in his opinion, shorter, rounder cows are more likely to get pregnant. Creepy bestiality impregnating cult. Slight tangent. Chad DeCow, yes, that's his actual name, traced the genetic makeup of modern Holstein dairy cows to only 2 bulls and about 50 cows, which means that the dairy industry, specifically in the US, has been very heavily inbreeding these animals. And guess what this dairy judging practice encourages? More inbreeding. And why is that bad? Well, for starters, as far as I understand, heavily inbred animals have a higher chance of their recessive genes to be expressed, increasing the likelihood of genetic disease. Heavy inbreeding also affects fertility rates. Holstein fertility has dropped significantly since the 1960s. Pregnancy rates in the 60s were 35 to 40%, but by the year 2000 had dropped to 24%. Which probably might decrease the farmer's profit at some point, which I don't give a shit about as far as the farmers go, but I do care about how many times the cow gets molested for this process through invasive heat checks and artificial insemination, and what happens to the cows with reduced fertility. Another quick tangent, a tangent within a tangent, I want to expose you to one more example of why the dairy industry is a creepy bestiality cult. In order to impregnate cows, they need to be in heat. And the farmers need to observe and check the cow's heat status in various ways. I'm gonna post 2 of those ways, and you can read it for yourself. I don't want my voice to be associated with your reactions to this. Let's continue with the dairy cow judging. 15% of the score is given for the frame of the cow, which is her skeletal parts, with the exception of feet and legs. The judgment of frame includes the head. And what the fuck is a feminine head? Yeah. Dairy cows are described as feminine. Here's what they mean by that. Femininity is desired in the dairy cow. A feminine cow will be sharp and clean-fronted, with a lean neck and long, smooth muscling. And there is a little drawing of a desirable feminine cow and an undesirable butch thick cow. Femininity in the cow is also related to the category dairy character, which is given 20% of the final score. Apparently, dairy character is an indication that the cow converts feed into milk rather than body into flesh. Here's how it's described in this handbook. Dairy character is signified by the freeness of flesh, sharpness of the withers, incurving, flat thighs set wide apart, loose and pliable skin, long, lean, smooth blending neck, clean-cut throat, dewlap, a brisket, wide, flat and well-spaced ribs, and deep and refined flanks. This description has erotica vibes, a creepy, outdated, super objectifying erotica. And in this judging handbook released by the University of Minnesota, major consideration is given to general openness and angularity while maintaining strength, flatness of bone, and freedom from coarseness. Consideration is given to stage of lactation. So to me, this resembles the beauty competitions for women, which are creepy and weird, but these standards for cows are even creepier. Like in the case of human women, the purpose of these competitions was to find a sexy woman. What is the purpose in the case of dairy cows? Describing them as feminine, measuring them, touching them, feeling every part of their bodies. But this is totally different, of course. The primary function of the dairy cow is the economical production of milk, so this creepy terminology is totally just to measure productivity. There are 2 more categories and they have creepy bestiality vibes as well, but it's time to wrap this up. Before I go, there is one more creepy culty aspect to this. These judging contests are basically an indoctrination tool for the industry. According to the 4-H contest rules, their judging competitions are for kids, the minimum age being 8 and the maximum 19. There are small awards and big plaques, but I wonder what the cow's prize is. More impregnation, separation, milking and mastitis? Gotcha. So altogether, I think I made a pretty convincing case for why the dairy industry is a creepy bestiality cult. Please subscribe, like, share. See you next time.